What would you do if the president suddenly stopped in front of your tiny workshop and called you by name? The midday sun burned over the streets of Ouagadougou, heat waves rippling above the tarmac. Cars and motorbikes sped by, raising clouds of dust that clung to sweaty faces and windshields. At the corner of a noisy junction, a man in worn, grease-stained clothes bent over the hood of an old pickup truck. His hands were black with oil, his face shining with sweat. This was Thomas, once the brightest student in his school, now a roadside mechanic struggling to get by. Back then, teachers admired his sharp mind, and classmates leaned on him for help with homework. He dreamed of becoming an engineer, maybe even building a better Burkina Faso. But when a fire took his parents at 16, Thomas left school to raise his younger sister. An old villager taught him how to fix engines, and eventually he moved to the city, setting up a tiny workshop on this dusty street corner. Work was hard, the pay never steady. Some days, customers shouted at him for taking too long. Other days he went home with nothing. Still, Thomas refused to cheat anyone. If I stay honest and keep working, he often told himself, better days will come. That afternoon, something unusual broke the routine. A black car rolled to a stop at the junction. Two men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the street. Traffic slowed. Curious bystanders gathered. It's the president's convoy, someone whispered. Thomas barely looked up. He crouched beside a motorcycle, tightening bolts. Big men in big cars didn't pay his bills, and he had work to finish. Then, a tall man in a crisp military uniform stepped out. His eyes swept across the crowd, then stopped, locked on Thomas. Thomas, he said softly, as if he couldn't believe it. Without looking up, Thomas replied, 1 minute. Almost done here. The voice came again, louder this time, carrying emotion. Thomas, is that really you? Thomas finally stood, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag. He looked up and froze. Ibrahim. The crowd fell silent. The man removed his cap and crossed the distance in 3 quick strides. Before the bodyguards could react, he pulled Thomas into a fierce embrace. I can't believe it's you, he said, his voice breaking. My best friend, my brother. Gasps swept through the crowd as they realized who he was. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso stood there in the open street, tears streaming down his face as he held a roadside mechanic in his arms, unwilling to let go. Thomas's chest tightened. He hadn't seen Ibrahim since they were boys in the same village, dreaming that they would change the country together. Life had carried one of them to the presidential palace and left the other on this dusty corner. You promised we'd change this country side by side, Ibrahim said softly. How did I let this happen to you? You didn't, Thomas replied with a faint smile. Life just took us on different roads. Ibrahim gripped his shoulders firmly. Then tell me everything. Come with me now, leave this place. Thomas shook his head. I can't. I've got customers waiting. The president straightened his cap, glanced at the half-finished work, and then said something no one expected. Then I'll sit here with you. And so he did. The president of Burkina Faso, a man whose days were measured in seconds, lowered himself onto a creaky wooden stool beside the oil-stained mechanic. Shock rippled through the crowd. Cars slowed, some stopped completely, and dozens of phones lifted to record the moment. Ibrahim didn't care. All he saw was his childhood friend, the same pride, honesty, and quiet strength he had known since boyhood. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the worn bench outside the tin-roofed workshop. Afternoon light spilled through the dust-filled air, shimmering in the heat. The city seemed to hold its breath. No one dared interrupt. You haven't changed, Thomas, Ibrahim said softly. Still stubborn, still humble. Thomas chuckled. And you're still dramatic, sitting next to a dirty mechanic in front of half the city. Your guards look ready to faint. Ibrahim laughed through damp eyes. Let them. They need to remember that power means nothing without loyalty and truth. You were always the one who reminded me of that. Thomas's gaze softened. Do you remember when we got caught stealing mangoes from old man Kibley's farm? How could I forget? Ibrahim grinned. You ran so fast your shoe flew into the river, and you still came back for me. That's when I knew you were different. And you told me, Thomas said quietly, that one day we'd lead this country together. Ibrahim's smile faded. "And I told you I'd never lose you. But you had to care for your sister. I should have searched for you, Thomas. I should have helped." Thomas looked down at his work-stained hands. "I don't blame you. I'm proud of you. Look at what you've done for this country." Ibrahim lowered his head. "But how can I say I'm changing the country when the brightest boy I knew is still struggling to survive?" Before Thomas could answer, a little girl of about 10 came running up, breathless. "Papa, Mama says come home early. There's no firewood to cook the rice." She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening at the sight of the man standing beside her father. "Papa, is that the president?" Thomas smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. This is Uncle Ibrahim." Ibrahim's face lit up. "Come here, little one." The girl hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "She's beautiful," Ibrahim said softly. "What's her name?" "Amina," Thomas replied with quiet pride. "My pride and joy." Ibrahim's expression turned serious. "She deserves more than this, Thomas. You've carried enough. Let me help." Thomas stood, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Ibrahim, I don't need charity. I need a promise." "Anything," Ibrahim said without hesitation. "Promise me you'll make this a country where no child has to leave school just to survive. Promise me you'll protect the honest, the hardworking, the people who never gave up." Ibrahim gripped his hand firmly. "I promise on my honor, and I'll begin today with you." That evening, Ibrahim canceled every meeting on his schedule. Back at the palace, he gathered his ministers in the grand hall. "Today," he told them, "I sat with a man who reminded me why I became president. We must do more. We must lift up the people who hold this country together with their bare hands, quietly, without reward." He never spoke Thomas's name, but his heart burned with a new fire, one lit by friendship, by loyalty, and by the ache of seeing a good man live in quiet struggle. Meanwhile, Thomas walked home holding Amina's small hand. Neighbors peeked from doorways, whispering, their eyes filled with new respect. But Thomas didn't care for the murmurs or the sudden attention. What mattered was this: his old friend had remembered him. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something was about to change. The next morning in Ouagadougou, the sun climbed, slow and golden, over the city. Thomas was already at work, crouched beside a battered motorcycle, tightening its chain. He hummed softly under his breath. The rhythm of his day was the same as always, until he noticed the traffic. Cars slowed, heads turned, and a murmur spread through the street. Then Thomas froze. A black government convoy rolled to a stop in front of his workshop. This wasn't like yesterday's visit. Today felt official. Men in suits and crisp uniforms stepped out first. The crowd swelled, neighbors pressing closer, whispering. From the middle car, President Ibrahim Traoré emerged, and this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him came journalists, cameramen, and government officials. Thomas's eyes flicked to the side. A small stage had been set up right beside his dusty shed. Loudspeakers hummed. A microphone waited. "What is this, Ibrahim?" Thomas called out, confusion in his voice. Ibrahim walked over, smiling warmly. "Thomas, yesterday I cried. Today I came to honor." He turned to the crowd, took the microphone, and his voice rang out clear. "People of Burkina Faso, today I want you to meet my friend. Not just any friend. This man was the top of our class. When I was failing mathematics, he taught me. When I had no food, he shared his with me. When tragedy struck, he gave up his own dreams to care for his sister. And while I became your president, he worked humbly, quietly, by the roadside." The murmurs died. All eyes turned to Thomas. "Yesterday," Ibrahim continued, "he reminded me what real service looks like. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to be made rich. He asked me to promise to do more for people like him. People who work day and night with honesty and dignity." The crowd erupted in applause. "Today," Ibrahim said, raising his hand, "I make good on that promise." He turned back to Thomas. "From this moment, you will no longer work by the roadside. Your workshop will become a government-sponsored training center, where you will teach young people to repair cars, to earn a living, to stand with pride. The building is ready. The tools and equipment are waiting. A team will work beside you." Thomas stared at him, speechless. His lips moved, but no sound came. "And one more thing," Ibrahim added, his voice steady. "Your daughter Amina will have a full scholarship, any school you choose, all the way through university, and your family will move into a new home, provided by the government." The weight of it all struck Thomas like a wave. His knees buckled, and tears streamed down his face. The wrench slipped from his hands as he covered his eyes. He had never asked for this. All he had wanted was to be remembered. And now he was being celebrated. The crowd clapped harder, some wiping away tears, others shouting, "Long live the president!" Cameras clicked non-stop, journalists shoved, microphones forward, their flashes catching the beads of sweat rolling down Thomas's face. Minutes later, he found himself standing on the small stage, a microphone trembling in his hands. He cleared his throat, eyes sweeping over the sea of faces. I don't know what to say," he began, his voice unsteady. "I never wanted fame. I only wanted to do the right thing." He paused, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. "And I'm not the only one," he went on. "There are many people like me across this country, people who are good, people who are strong, but who go unnoticed. Please don't forget them." He turned to Ibrahim, his voice softening. "Thank you, my brother, not just for this, but for remembering who you are and where you came from." That evening, the story swept across Burkina Faso. TV stations replayed the embrace between the president and the mechanic. Radio hosts spoke of a friendship that stirred the nation. On social media, clips of Thomas's trembling but honest speech spread like wildfire. People cried. People cheered. Some even said that maybe, just maybe, things were finally changing. In a small home not far from the workshop, Amina threw her arms around her mother. "Mama, Papa's a hero," she said, her eyes glowing. Double quotes, "Yes," Esther whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "And today, the world finally sees it." That night, in the quiet of his study, Ibrahim sat alone with an old photograph. Two boys in faded school uniforms grinned at the camera, one with his arm draped around the other. The president traced the worn edges with his fingers. "Thank you, Thomas," he whispered. "You reminded me of who I am." 3 days later, life already felt different. The new mechanic training center buzzed with energy. People from nearby towns came to shake Thomas's hand, take photos, and thank him for his honesty. That morning, as Thomas swept the front steps, a sleek black car rolled to a slow stop. Its polished body gleamed like liquid under the sun. "Too fine for this dusty street." 2 men stepped out. One was tall, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. The other was shorter, but carried himself with the air of someone used to giving orders. "Are you Mr. Thomas?" the tall man asked. "Yes," Thomas replied, leaning on his broom. "How can I help you?" "We have a business proposal," the shorter man said smoothly. "A private one." Thomas hesitated, then led them into his small office. The shorter man glanced around before placing a thick brown envelope on the desk. Inside, he said in a low voice, "is 5 million CFA. Thomas frowned at the envelope. "What's this for?" The man smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "We know you're close to the president. Everyone does, and we know he trusts you. What we want is very simple." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" This time, the tall man spoke. "On his next visit, make sure he drinks something we give you. That's all. After that, you'll be richer than your dreams. Your own car shop, houses in Abidjan and Dar es Salaam, your daughter studying abroad." A chill ran through Thomas. "You want me to poison the president? SHHH. The tall man's head snapped toward the window, scanning the street. "It's not poison," the shorter man whispered, leaning closer. "Just a special drink. He'll get sick for a while, but you'll be safe. We have people everywhere." Thomas stood slowly, folding his arms. His face betrayed nothing. "Let me think about it. Come back in 2 days." The men exchanged satisfied looks. The shorter one reached out and shook his hand. "Good decision. We'll be in touch." As soon as they stepped out, Thomas locked the door behind them and bolted toward home. He burst into the kitchen, where Esther was stirring a pot. "Esther," he cried, stumbling through the doorway. She nearly dropped the spoon. "What is it, my husband?" she asked, fear flashing in her eyes. Thomas pulled out a chair and sank heavily into it, breathing hard. "Listen to me. 2 men came to see me. They brought an envelope full of money. They want me to give the president something to drink, something that will make him sick." Esther's spoon clattered into the pot. She covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God, her people are wicked. That man, the president, has done nothing but help us." "I know," Thomas said firmly. "That's why I will never agree. I only told them to come back in 2 days so they won't suspect I'm going to the police or to the president himself." "So what will you do?" Esther asked, her voice trembling. Thomas looked up, resolve in his eyes. "I will go to the president tonight. He must know about this immediately." That evening, Thomas tucked the brown envelope under his arm and slipped the small scrap of paper with the men's phone number into his pocket. With the help of the president's assistant, he arranged a private meeting. When Thomas entered the presidential office, Ibrahim rose with a smile. "My brother, what brings you here at this hour?" Thomas walked straight to the desk, placed the envelope and the paper down, and spoke in a low, steady voice. "Your enemies want me to betray you." Ibrahim's smile vanished. His eyes locked on Thomas as he listened in silence. Thomas told him everything: the men's faces, their voices, their promises of houses and power, and the so-called special drink. When he finished, he looked Ibrahim in the eye. "My president, I owe you my life. I could never harm you. I knew I had to tell you." For a long moment, Ibrahim didn't speak. Then he sat back, deeply moved. "Thomas, you just saved my life." The president immediately called for his security chief. Within hours, a covert team tracked the 2 men to a hotel just outside the city. They were arrested without warning and brought in for questioning. When Ibrahim heard they were in custody, he asked Thomas to sit beside him in the investigation room. The man who had made the offer sat in chains, his head bowed. "Why did you do it?" Ibrahim asked calmly. The man's voice trembled. I was sent. There are people who want power. They told me if I helped remove you, I get a seat in the new government." "Who are these people?" one of the officers demanded. The man hesitated, then whispered, "They're powerful. But I was greedy. I didn't think you'd find out. I blame the devil." Thomas leaned forward, his voice hard. "Don't blame the devil. You had a choice and you chose evil." The man lowered his head. Later, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison without the possibility of parole. His picture on the evening news shocked the entire country. That night, Ibrahim called Thomas again. "You didn't just save me," he said quietly. "You saved this country from falling into the wrong hands. What can I ever do to thank you?" Thomas smiled. "You already have, by being a good friend." Ibrahim pulled him into a tight embrace. "No, Thomas, from today, you are more than a friend. You are my brother." Days passed, and the story of Thomas's loyalty spread across the nation. Newspapers called him the mechanic who saved the president. Teachers began telling school children about his courage and honesty. Across Burkina Faso, people started to believe again that true friendship and good character could still be rewarded. Finally, President Ibrahim Traoré called a national press conference. Thomas and his family sat in the front row, unsure of what was about to happen. The president stepped up to the podium, smiling warmly. "My fellow citizens, today is not about me. It is about someone who reminded me, and reminded all of us, what loyalty, truth, and friendship truly mean." He pointed toward Thomas. This man was offered riches, houses, and power. But instead of choosing evil, he chose to protect me. He chose honesty. The crowd erupted in applause, many with tears in their eyes. Today, the president continued, "I want to honor not just Thomas, but his entire family." He looked out over the audience. "Where's Amina?" Thomas squeezed his daughter's hand. "Go on, my child." Amina walked to the stage slowly, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. She clutched her father's hand as if afraid to let go. President Ibrahim's voice rang out, clear and proud. "I am proud to announce that Amina, the daughter of Thomas, will receive a full government scholarship to study at any university of her choice anywhere in the world, from today until the day she graduates. All her school fees, books, travel, and accommodation will be paid in full." The crowd roared, cameras flashing like stars, Amina's eyes filled with tears. She turned and hugged her father so tightly he could barely breathe. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. Thomas kissed the top of her head. "You deserve it, my daughter." But the president wasn't finished. He scanned the crowd again. "And now, where's Madame Esther?" Thomas's wife rose slowly, wiping tears from her cheeks. She never imagined a day like this could come. "Madame Esther," Ibrahim said warmly, "you stood by your husband. You encouraged him to do the right thing, even when it was dangerous. You raised a family built on love and strength. As a gift from the people of Burkina Faso, I am opening a large modern supermarket in your name. You will be the owner. You will never have to worry about survival again." Esther gasped, her knees weakening as she dropped to the floor, hands trembling. "Thank you, sir. Thank you," she cried. The president gently lifted her up. "No, my sister. I should be the one thanking you." Later that day, a new building was unveiled in the heart of the city, the Thomas and Esther supermarket. Inside, rows of bright shelves stood fully stocked. Freezers hummed with cold drinks, and cash counters were ready. Staff members waited to begin work. Not far away, Thomas's dusty roadside workshop had been transformed into one of the largest mechanic training centers in the country. Young boys and girls were already signing up, eager to learn from the man who had become a national symbol of loyalty. That evening, Thomas and his family gathered in their new home for dinner. The table overflowed with food, and the air rang with laughter. Thomas raised his glass of juice. "To my wife, my daughter, and my brother, the president, today we celebrate not just success, but friendship and truth." "To truth," Esther echoed. "To my scholarship," Amina added with a grin. They all laughed together. Back at the presidential palace, Ibrahim stood by his window, gazing at the stars. In a quiet voice meant only for himself, he said, "Some presidents are protected by guards, guns, and gates. But me, I am protected by a friend." And so began a new chapter for Burkina Faso, a country where even a poor roadside mechanic could rise, where honesty proved stronger than riches, and where friendship truly could change the world. Because true friendship and loyalty never fade with time. Even the smallest acts of kindness can plant seeds that grow into life-changing opportunities. Real leadership is measured not by power, but by how you lift others up. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes in the power of friendship and kindness. Thank you for watching. Your support helps us tell more stories that inspire the world.